I love my Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. There is very little I do not like about this car, but I do have one big issue, and that is that I have no place to charge it. When I started doing my initial research into the Tesla Model 3, I knew, of course, being an EV, that charging was going to be important. And specifically with the Standard Range Plus model that I ended up getting, I knew that it was going to be even more important because of its lower 240 to 250 miles of advertised range. So charging the car was going to be very important. Just one little hiccup with that, I live in an apartment, like most people, that doesn't have chargers. So I have no real way to charge my car at home, the big selling point and incentive for most people who buy an EV. So what do you do? So there's actually a couple of options to consider. And before I kind of get into this, I was told by many people not to get an EV. If you don't have a reliable way to charge it at home, you should even consider the car. I see this on Reddit threads and YouTube comments and all over the place, and I get it. Not having a home charger kind of takes a lot of the easiness out of owning an EV, and it makes it a lot more complicated to have to go and fill up your tank. But it's not impossible to do, and it might be easier to own one without a home charger than you may think. But first, let's take a drive. That is not good. Neither is that. Okay, so let's talk about supercharging. So the whole Tesla supercharger network, if you think about it, is actually really cool. And I think a big reason why many people buy into the Tesla ecosystem to have access to this global network of high-speed chargers that allow you to charge your car, in most cases, probably on the route to your destination, wherever you're already going, or maybe a slight detour. And in some cases, you can charge your Tesla completely for free. In others, it's a nominal fee of a couple bucks that isn't too big of a deal. So before I go any further in this video, I do have to acknowledge I've gotten the question, I've gotten the comment, I've gotten scolded because you should not be using supercharging as your main source of charging your car. That's a horrible thing to do. It's going to degrade the battery. It's going to provide range loss. It's just going to be a horrible thing. And I totally get it. I'm not looking to abuse the supercharger network. I totally understand. It is not intended to be your main source of charging. And I understand there are conflicting reports on both sides on battery degradation, whether it could degrade the battery faster than if you just were to normally charge your car through a 240 volt outlet. I get that, but for now, let me try to explain why I'm supercharging my car and why I use that as kind of my main primary method of charging. So besides the fact that I really don't have another choice to charge my Model 3 at home, I happen to also live in Southern California, which kind of gives me a benefit in terms of supercharging because there are many superchargers around me. I probably have more superchargers in a 20-mile radius of my apartment than most people would in a 50 or 100-mile radius if they were in the Midwest or somewhere else across the globe. So that is an advantage. But there's also an inherent disadvantage of that because these superchargers are always busy. Always busy. On the weekends, you can expect to wait in line during peak times, or usually all day on a Saturday or Sunday. And typically what would be considered off-peak times, like at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, for example, the superchargers are almost always full, especially if there's one or two stations down, which is kind of a constant in most supercharging locations in SoCal. The supercharger stalls that are available are almost always full. So it's an advantage and a disadvantage, but it is nice that I can go to a supercharger that's just, 20 minutes away from my apartment, and it's not a real big inconvenience. So let's talk about battery degradation. Now, I really don't want to get into this because, like I said, there are arguments on both sides I've read that Tesla explicitly states you should not be using the supercharger network to charge your car, more than the occasional road trip, or certainly not once a week. It should not be used in that way. Other people say it's fine, it's good for the battery. I'm not here to argue with that. I'm here to simply say that I know I probably shouldn't be doing it, and I have seen some effect on the battery, though I don't know if that's completely due to battery degradation rather than just software optimization and learning the way I drive. But I will say, just kind of as a note, a data point for this video, my full capacity at 100% charge has gone basically from 240 down to about 225, 230. So I have lost about 10 to 15 miles of range in my standard full charge, though I think some of that is due to software optimization and not so much hardware degradation, but I'm not really here to argue that right now. I also have to give a big credit and a big thank you and shout out to you guys for watching this video, because many of you have bought Model 3s, Model S's, Model X's from my referral link that's included down below. Check that out if you haven't already. But because of you guys doing that and being so kind and generous, you have gotten free supercharging miles and I have gotten free supercharging miles, which allows me to charge my car no cost, which is good because it's really the only way I charge my car. So thank you very much. You're allowing me to continue to drive my Model 3 and make these videos. A big thank you to you guys for using that referral code. What if you just do not want to supercharge and you want to do something else? Well, there are some other options which I will explain that'll also allow you to charge your car for a pretty low amount of money. One option to consider is one of the many companies that provide electric vehicle charging stations that are either free or a nominal fee. One of these close to me here in Southern California is ChargePoint. These chargers are everywhere. They're located at restaurants, they're located at apartment complexes, they're located all over the place, and you can easily be able to navigate in the app, find where there's one near you, and be able to plan to charge your car. Because it's 2020 and apps are super easy, let me pull up the ChargePoint app right here on the screen. You can kind of see here, I mean, this is Southern California, so there's maybe more than most, but there are chargers everywhere here on the map of the surroundings here. And I can literally just tap on one of these and see, okay, here's one in Irvine. I can go here and see that they're both available. I can see that they're J1172, or J1772, excuse me. That is going to work with my Model 3. I can see pricing. I can see the last time it was used. I can see tips. Sometimes they're kind of like located in obscure parking garages or around a weird corner. Other people will leave tips so you can easily find it. I mean, this is great. ChargePoint has such a, I can even zoom out here more here, such a vast network of chargers that I could go basically all over the world and be able to find chargers. I mean, the ChargePoint app is great. I can tap on, a station, see how many stallers are available, if someone's currently charging, what the rate is. If I wanted to go here to Sioux City, I can tap on this. I mean, you guys kind of get the idea. ChargePoint is nice. They are a company, it's a system of their own chargers. It's not proprietary. It uses the J1772, excuse me, yet again. So it is going to be an adaptive interface that you can use with your Model 3 and other electric vehicles. And there's a wide infrastructure. As you saw, they're all over the world, and especially in big cities. So it's really easy to be able to use the ChargePoint systems to charge up your car. So obviously we're not talking supercharged speeds here. So what is the charge rate you can use with something like a ChargePoint? Well, it's a little bit slower, but it's still about 25 to 30 miles an hour, which is plenty. This is really helpful if you work at a location that has maybe a ChargePoint in the parking lot, or you're going to see a movie or go to dinner. You can plug this in, and within 2 to 3 hours, you've gotten 50 to 75 miles for a couple of bucks. Super convenient, and definitely something to consider. It's something to look into to see if you have ChargePoint systems around your location. Obviously, prices on the ChargePoint systems are going to range. I've seen everything from a free charge to $1, $1.25, $1.75. It's going to be in some kind of range, especially depending on where you are in the world, but they're not astronomical, at least the ones I've used, and usually for a couple of bucks, you're able to get a decent amount of charge in your Model 3. Of course, it's not going to be as fast as a supercharger, but it's also not going to be nearly as expensive as supercharging your car either. Of course, there are other systems besides ChargePoint. There's EVgo, there's other big names. I guess my point here is to say that it is not as hard as you'd think to find a charger in your area. ChargePoint and all these big name brands have chargers usually in business complexes and apartments and new residential communities. I mean, there's a lot of ways to find a place to charge, and a lot of these systems popping up more and more often that are gonna allow you to charge your car just as easy. And while we're speaking of apps, before we get too far off of this, I do want to mention one more that is super helpful, especially was helpful to me when I first got my Model 3. It's called PlugShare. It's a free app. You can download it on iOS or Android. I believe there's a web version of this as well. And you can essentially basically scroll around here and find different charging stations. It's not platform specific, so it's not just ChargePoints or EVgo's. It's basically everything in the area. Most of these are pretty good. Sometimes I've had kind of mixed results with these listings, but you can usually just, kind of tap on these. J1772, it's gonna work with your Tesla. You can see, in this case, parking free. It's open 24/7. There's restrooms and EV parking near your EV parking, I guess, nice amenities. Then it'll tell you kind of the check-ins. Some people were able to get it working, some people weren't. But this, again, will work pretty much anywhere. You can just kind of open up a map and kind of look to see if I was gonna go up to the Bay Area, of course, which is gonna be very popular. I wanted to see, where's a charger. I could tap on my different options and see what is working, where it is, how it works, what the adapter type is. Very, very, very helpful and free. It's PlugShare. Definitely download that app. All right, so let's say you don't have the option to charge with one of those stations. You're not able to find something on PlugShare. What's like a last resort, last ditch effort to charge your car? Well, if you have a regular 110 outlet, and that's all you got, you still can actually charge your car through that. Specifically, the Tesla Model 3, all variants come with a wall connector in the car. You can open it up in a little pouch, you can plug it into the wall, plug one end to the 110 outlet, one end into your car, and it'll charge at a very slow speed, about 5 to 6 miles an hour, according to my recent experiments with it. It's not always gonna be the most reliable. I found issues where the charging speed fluctuates. Sometimes it charges, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just stops and refuses to charge. It's gonna depend on the house or the newness of the plug and all that kind of stuff. And though this isn't optimal, you still can get away with it. I have heard the stories of plenty of people who just had access to a regular outlet who were able to kind of trickle charge their car just fine at night. Maybe get, 10, 20 miles at a very slow rate. It's still gonna be absolutely better than nothing. So if you have just a regular outlet accessible to you, don't count it out, because it's still gonna give you something, and something is certainly better than nothing, especially when it comes to charging up your car. So I guess the big question here, should you consider buying a Tesla if you do not have access to a home charger? Well, here are my thoughts. I'll tell you, after 9 months, I've absolutely been able to make it work. It has not been as convenient as being able to plug in at night, but I think the once or twice a week I had to charge wasn't all that bad. I was able to get work done in the car. I was able to go do other things. It's not the nightmare that everyone wants you to think it is, though it definitely is not as convenient. Let me stress that and stress it again. One way you can supplement not having a home charger is if you have a charger at your place of work. A lot of business complexes and parking lots or public parking near your office might have chargers available. That is a great way to be able to get your car charged while you work and not have to worry about charging at home. And also, if you have a 110 outlet, if you're able to kind of trickle charge, that is certainly better than nothing. Just plan accordingly, do your research, see what's around you, see if there's a charger or an outlet near you anywhere that you happen to frequent or you're gonna spend a lot of time. That's definitely going to be helpful. Like I said, it's certainly not convenient. It's not the best practice. It's definitely not how an electric vehicle really is intended to be owned. But I will say this, don't let it deter you. Don't let it scare you. If you do your research, you do your planning, it certainly is not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. And I also have to say that just being able to own an electric car, owning a Tesla Model 3 is well worth a little time and a little hassle.